Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping into the shoes of analytical gaming journalists because, well, there is an absolute tidal wave of news surrounding ArenaNet right now, and we really need to untangle it for you.
Yeah, the information is just flooding in. And because the community's, so deeply invested in this universe, every single little detail is being hyper-analyzed.
Oh, totally. We are pulling from a massive stack of sources today to figure out what's actually going on behind closed doors. We've got an official announcement breakdown from InVen Global, a really revealing interview on WCF Tech with studio head Colin Johansson, a leaked combat designer portfolio that is basically setting the internet on fire right now.
Oh, the Reddit threads are going crazy over that one.
Right. Extensive threads from our gaming leaks and rumors, our Guild Wars 2, and the brand new our Guild Wars 3 subreddit. So our mission today is to clear up a major conflation happening in the community right now.
Exactly. People are looking at this wall of headlines, and honestly, they're mashing two entirely different projects together.
Yeah, they really are.
You've got a spin-off called Mistbound, and then you have the mammoth, highly anticipated Guild Wars 3. And ArenaNet is attempting to pull off a fundamental shift in their studio's DNA here.
They really are trying to end a decade of MMO stagnation, but to do it, they're systematically abandoning the very design philosophies that made their games famous in the first place. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the smaller project to set the record straight.
Yeah, because if we want to understand the current anxiety in the fan base, we have to look at how this news actually trickled out. It all started with a quiet trademark filing.
Right, back in April.
Yeah, so back in April, NCSoft, the massive publisher that owns ArenaNet, filed a trademark for the word Mistbound. Now, in the Guild Wars universe, the mists represent the foundational fabric of reality.
It's like the connective tissue between different worlds and game modes, right?
Exactly. So naturally, when the Reddit detectives found this trademark, they assumed it was a massive mainline franchise update.
Yeah.
Theories were just flying.
Oh, I saw them. People were saying it was the secret title for Guild Wars 2 Expansion 7.
Or a highly anticipated Hall of Monuments 2.0 designed to physically bridge the gap between their older titles and a new game.
There's even a dummy Steam page floating around with the working title, Lion's Arch, Guild Wars Arena. People were connecting these invisible dots and just assuming ArenaNet was gearing up to drop a massive open-world expansion.
Right, but as we learned globally on June 21st, Mistbound is not an MMO at all.
Not even close.
No, it is actually the very first collectible card game set in the Guild Wars universe, co-developed by NCSoft, ArenaNet, and Bilibili.
Which immediately explains why it caused such a shockwave. Players were bracing for a massive 3D open-world update, and instead they received a 2D card game announcement.
Yeah, it was a bit of a whiplash moment for the fans.
Definitely. However, looking closely at the InVen Global breakdown, this is not just another standard digital card game where two players sit across a static board and, watch math happen.
No, they are attempting to translate the spatial logic of a 3D battlefield into a card format.
And that is the part that actually caught my attention. Because in a standard card game, if I play a creature with high attack stats, I usually just point it at the opponent's health pool and subtract the number.
Right. The physical space of the board usually doesn't matter. It's just a holding zone for the math.
Exactly. But Mistbound features a 5x3 tactical grid. You have units, and you have commanders, which are iconic characters based on the 9 distinct professions from Guild Wars 2.
And you don't just play them, right? You physically maneuver them around this grid.
Yeah, it's like chess meeting a traditional CCG.
What's fascinating here is how this alters the cognitive load of a card game. Because in a traditional MMO, spatial awareness dictates your survival.
Like, where are you standing? Do you have line of sight on your healer?
Exactly. Are you being flanked by an enemy rogue? Mistbound takes that spatial logic and forces you to manage it on a 5x3 grid. The gameplay mechanics emphasize multi-directional movement.
So you aren't just attacking.
Right, you are pushing enemy cards out of position or using a specific skill to pull an opponent's high-value commander into your line of fire.
Oh, wow. So it literally turns the board into a puzzle. Like, if I have a devastating heavy hitter card, I can't just drop it and win.
No, you have to ensure the lane is clear, or you have to physically flank the enemy's defender card to actually connect the hit.
That sounds incredibly deep. But wait, looking at the community reaction right now, there is a lot of skepticism here. And the friction isn't necessarily about the grid combat, is it?
No, it's about who is holding the reins. ArenaNet is providing the lore, the universe, and the assets. But NCSoft is the primary developer driving the project.
And that publisher-developer dynamic is a major historical pain point for this specific community.
It really is.
Hmm.
Fans are fiercely protective of the Guild Wars' intellectual property. They're expressing a very real fear that if Mistbound fails to capture an audience, the publisher will blame the Guild Wars brand rather than their own game design.
Which could potentially hurt the studio's future funding. And the friction is so high that users are scrutinizing every single frame of the promotional material.
Oh, the AI allocations.
Yes, there is a massive controversy brewing where users are adamantly claiming that NCSoft used AI to generate or animate the card artwork from existing official assets.
They are pointing to what they call that weird, unmistakable AI fluidness in the character animations.
Now, to be completely impartial here, NCSoft has officially and strongly stated they used zero AI in the production of these assets, but the players are pushing back hard, and it's dominating the conversation.
It is.
Yeah.
But we have to step back and look at the broader business reality driving this decision. ArenaNet needs substantial, continuous funding to develop their massive, mainline AAA titles.
Right.
By partnering with NCSoft and Bilibili, which is a massive platform in Asia with a colossal mobile ecosystem, they are targeting a highly lucrative, competitive CCG market.
So outsourcing the IP to build this specialized tactical puzzle game creates a parallel revenue stream.
Exactly. It essentially acts as a financial shield for the core studio, allowing them the freedom to take massive risks on their primary franchise.
Which bridges us perfectly to what that core in-house team is actually doing with all their newly freed up resources.
Wow.
We are moving from the tactical grid to the absolute mammoth in the room, Guild Wars 3.
The big one.
Yeah. At Summer Game Fest, we got the official confirmation. Guild Wars 3 is in active development for PC and PlayStation 5, targeting a closed beta for fall 2027.
And the hype was immediate. It generated over 500,000 Steam wish lists almost overnight.
But the actual design details coming out of studio head Colin Johansson's blog post represent a total structural teardown of what we expect from this franchise.
They really do. Johansson stated very clearly that Guild Wars 3 will sit in the, quote, middle of the MMO spectrum.
Okay, what does that actually mean?
Well, to grasp the magnitude of that statement, we need to look at how this studio historically handles scale. The original Guild Wars, which they are now referring to as Reforged, was technically an instanced cooperative online RPG.
Right, you only ever saw the wider player base in designated city hubs.
Exactly. Once you stepped out into the combat zones, the server generated a private instance just for you, your friends, and a team of NPC henchmen.
Then Guild Wars 2 launched and completely inverted that philosophy. They built a massive, sprawling open world governed by mega server technology.
Instead of locking players into isolated server shards, the game dynamically routed people across different instances to ensure the maps always felt packed with players.
Which allowed them to design those insane map-wide meta events. You could seamlessly run into a zone and suddenly find yourself fighting a world boss the size of a mountain alongside 100 other strangers.
It was breathtaking.
It was. But reading between the lines of this new announcement, they are abandoning those massive 100-player encounters. They are stepping back from the giant screen-filling zergs to focus on smaller player counts and organic exploration.
Yes, and that is a massive shift.
So my question for you, and really for everyone listening, is why? Why would they abandon the giant-scale experiences that literally defined Guild Wars 2? Is trying to capture both audiences going to alienate the massive open-world fan base?
What's fascinating here is that a smaller-scale world is actually required to support their highly ambitious new combat system. It all comes down to a severe technical wall.
Oh, interesting. What kind of wall?
The technical wall of physics. Why shrink the world? Because a smaller scale environment is a strict, non-negotiable requirement for action combat. You cannot have 100 players executing precise, physics-based action combat on a single target.
Ah, right. The math just breaks down.
Exactly.
If every single sword swing requires the server to calculate a physical collision hitbox in real time, having 100 players attack a dragon simultaneously would just melt the server architecture.
Or force the developers to massively downgrade the visual fidelity, basically blinding everyone with particle effects.
Which brings us to the most illuminating piece of evidence we have in this deep dive, the leaked combat designer portfolio.
This is where things get really spicy.
Back in 2023, ArenaNet brought on a combat designer named Craig D. Leak. And recently, his online portfolio was unearthed by the Guild Wars 3 subreddit.
Yeah, and while the footage isn't officially stamped with the Guild Wars 3 logo, the community has relentlessly analyzed the action combat prototypes he was specifically hired to work on.
The footage looks like a completely different genre. It showcases a highly kinetic, weighty, action-oriented system. You see heavy sword impacts that actually stagger enemies, active dodging, wall running, and a huge emphasis on verticality.
Which is why Reddit users are drawing direct comparisons to games like Devil May Cry, Black Desert Online, and Elden Ring.
We are looking at a stark departure from the traditional MMO model, where you just press the tab key to lock onto an enemy and let your character auto-attack while you manage a toolbar of cooldowns.
Totally. And this specific combat style perfectly explains why the studio is tagging the game as an action-adventure MMORPG or an MMORPG.
Right, the ARPG tag.
Yeah. The Reddit theorists are incredibly sharp here. They point out that adopting the ARPG label, combined with this weighty collision-based combat, is a highly deliberate strategy to capture the console market.
Oh, that makes so much sense for the PS5 launch.
Exactly. When you release a game on the PlayStation 5, you are competing for the attention of players who are conditioned by cinematic single-player experiences like The Witcher 3 or Kingdom Come: Deliverance.
A console player wants to pull the right trigger and immediately feel the controller vibrate as their sword connects with a shield. They do not want to manage a spreadsheet of status effects.
No, they want visceral feedback.
But implementing this style of combat completely shatters the current reality of how high-end Guild Wars 2 is played. I mean, we have to talk about the boon ball.
Oh boy, the boon ball.
It is the defining meta of the current game, and it is the exact thing an action combat system destroys. Right now, if you want to survive the hardest group content in GW2, you form a boon ball.
Which means your entire 50-person squad stands in a perfectly tight, overlapped circle.
Yeah, like a neon-colored rugby scrum. You all squeeze into a 10-foot radius and furiously spam area of effect buffs called boons on top of each other.
It creates a feedback loop of shared invulnerability and massive damage output. Mathematically, it is just the most efficient way to clear content, because the game's buffing system relies on close proximity.
But visually, it is a mess. You literally cannot see the boss you are fighting or the ground you are standing on because there are 50 layers of glowing particle effects exploding simultaneously.
You aren't playing a fantasy game anymore, you're playing the UI.
Exactly. Watching little buff icons tick down, it turns bosses into static HP sponges. But here is my pushback. If Guild Wars 3 completely abandons proximity buffing and plays like an anime fighter where everyone is zipping around vertically, how do you heal a group?
It's a great question.
Does it just turn into 5 people playing single-player games next to each other, making dungeons a visually cluttered mess? I mean, how on earth do you heal a group that refuses to stand still?
That is the exact logistical nightmare veteran support players are dreading right now. When your squad is highly mobile and spread out across a 3D space, coordinating heals becomes an exercise in frustration.
So how do they fix it?
Well, we have seen modern games solve this without reverting to tab targeting. Look at New World. They implemented action combat healing by forcing players to use localized, ground-targeted abilities and literal skill shots.
Wait, so you actually have to aim your healing spell like a sniper rifle?
Pretty much. If your teammate randomly dodge rolls out of the way, your heal misses and hits the dirt.
Wow, that requires an entirely different cognitive skill set than just clicking a name on a raid frame.
It does. And there is a really compelling theory from a Reddit user regarding how ArenaNet might map this immense complexity onto a PlayStation 5 controller.
Oh, I read this one. They suggest that the concept of auto attacks might be entirely stripped out, right?
Yes. Instead, you map heavy and light kinetic attacks directly to the face buttons. Then, you use the gamepad triggers as modifiers.
So holding down a trigger swaps your action palette. Very similar to the combat flow in Dragon's Dogma 2.
It is an elegant solution to the controller limitation problem. It allows a player to maintain the vast skill variety expected from an MMO, but delivers the kinetic, moment-to-moment impact of a pure action game.
You condense a 15-button keyboard rotation into a fluid, tactile controller experience. So you hold the left trigger, and your face buttons instantly become your 4 aimed healing spells. You let go, and they revert back to your sword combos.
That makes perfect sense for a console-first design approach.
But synthesizing all these mechanical and scale changes, we really have to look at how the target audience is actually processing this. I mean, we're doing a total vibe check on the fan base here.
And the vibe is complicated.
It is. You have 500,000 people adding it to their Steam wish lists, hyping up a modern engine. But beneath that, there is a profound creeping anxiety running through the established player base.
We are basically watching a community experience a collective identity crisis.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
On one side of the divide, you have players who are deeply fatigued by the traditional theme park MMO formula. They're exhausted by the neon rugby scrum.
They are begging for a game where individual mechanical skill, positioning, and timing actually matter more than how well you optimized your stat gear.
But on the exact opposite side, you have the MMO purists, who are extremely vocal on Reddit right now. They actively hate the idea of action combat.
Yeah, they don't want to manually block a giant hammer swing or aim a skill shot to keep their tank alive. They play MMOs for deep strategic build crafting.
They want combat where their brain wins the fight in the preparation phase, rather than relying on their twitch reflexes in the heat of the moment.
Right. One user explicitly stated that the second they're forced to line up an aim reticle to cast a spell, they are uninstalling the game. Which is harsh, but you get where they're coming from.
Definitely. And ArenaNet is acutely aware of this massive schism. It is exactly why they made a highly specific and frankly crucial promise during their initial announcement.
That Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2, and Guild Wars 3 will all actively coexist.
Exactly. They are deliberately promising to keep developing expansions for GW2 alongside the rollout of GW3. They know they cannot force a player who loves tab target strategy into an action combat ecosystem they despise.
Which is honestly the funniest part of doing this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the history of this franchise, it is the absolute circle of MMO life.
How so?
Well, when Guild Wars 2 launched over a decade ago, the original Guild Wars 1 players experienced this exact same existential dread. They were terrified of losing their deep, dual-classing, tab-target build system to this wild new action-y game that forced you to physically dodge roll out of red circles.
Oh, that's so true.
And now, a decade later, those very same GW2 players are terrified of losing their dodge roll game to an even faster, more kinetic GW3.
It highlights a brilliant, if risky, overarching strategy from the studio. ArenaNet isn't just building iterative sequels anymore. They are deliberately fragmenting their intellectual property to conquer entirely different, hyper-specific niches in the gaming market.
All right, let's summarize the board for you, so the next time you open your feed, you know exactly how to navigate this confusing web of information.
A good idea.
If you see headlines about a 5x3 grid-based CCG where commanders are physically pushing and pulling each other to gain spatial dominance, that is Mistbound.
Right. That is the competitive, tactical card game being spearheaded by NCSoft and Bilibili to capture the Asian mobile market, acting as a financial anchor for the IP.
And if you see headlines discussing a smaller-scale, instanced, console-friendly MMO featuring heavy vertical ARPG-style action combat, well, that is Guild Wars 3.
The core ArenaNet studio is actively shrinking the player counts in their open world because that is the only technical way to deliver a tightly tuned, high-fidelity action experience that relies on actual physics and collision detection.
So now, when you are scrolling through Reddit and seeing the endless tug-of-war between hype and doom-scrolling, you aren't just reacting to the noise. You actually understand the underlying design philosophy driving these controversial changes.
It's not just a publisher ruining a game for the sake of change. It is a calculated technological trade-off.
They are trading the breathtaking, massive scale of 100-player events for the deep, kinetic, mechanical depth of a modern action game.
They are looking at the landscape of modern gaming and recognizing that the definition of a massively multiplayer experience has to evolve if it wants to survive alongside the massive single-player action titles dominating the market.
Which leaves you with a really profound question to mull over. If a genre-defining studio like ArenaNet, a team that literally helped invent and popularize the massive, dynamic, open-world server event, is actively shrinking their world sizes and moving towards smaller-scale, instanced action combat, is the two-decade era of the truly massive theme park MMORPG finally dead?
That is the big question.
And if it is, and the future of the genre is just small groups of players in tightly instanced action arenas, what does that mean for the future of how we form sprawling online communities? Something to think about next time you log in. Keep diving deep.